You have arrived at the K.O.E. Nation. You mentioned Dante, and this is just a little aside. My pastor's son, he and I were best friends growing up. Okay, so this pastor, we've met. Okay, like we like, right. And even I was kind of like, "You're a pastor now? Really?" Like right. It was kind of like, and even I'm like, "Dude, I'm attending your church now? Really?" Yeah, it's God, Phil. It works in mysterious ways. Yeah, all right. But I remember, like, this is how much Catholics adore Dante's Inferno. Okay, when I was a kid, I remember they were WWE was doing a thing about Kane and the Undertaker, and they were quoting Dante's Inferno because they had an Inferno match coming up. So yeah, I'm dating myself a little bit here, and they were quoting Dante's Inferno. It was just this beautiful poetic prose, and I didn't like, I was an altar boy. Like the only verse of the Bible.
My camera's gonna be off for a sec.
No, that's fine. The only verse of the Bible that I was taught was "Faith without works is dead." That was it. That was the only one I was ever taught. And so there's all this.
That's a very good one.
There's all this beautiful prose, and I go, "Is Dante's Inferno in the Bible?" And my friend goes, "No, really, really." Oh, like it actually hurt him. You could see pain coming across his face as I asked that question, and he was just like, "No."
I would imagine.
You're like, "No, Phil." Oh my God. Yeah.
But it's true. Like we do venerate Dante in ways that Protestants have a hard time understanding. Although, we're also a big fan of Paradise Lost, even though that was written by a Protestant. So it's not like we reserve this kind of veneration only to Catholic authors. There's just something about the sort of beauty of the presentation that takes us in.
Well, it's sort of like, for lack of better terms, and forgive me, is another one. Give me some rope here, but
yeah, sure.
It's sort of the best way to, in your mind, visually understand and kind of wrap your mind around everything that Catholics would call, for lack of better terms, sacred tradition.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Like it, like kind of like it's the play. It's sacred tradition, the play. Like, I don't know how else to put it. Like it's if you don't understand
we take tradition seriously, and it's tradition with a capital T. And
a sacred S in front of the sacred. Yeah, trust.
Now, don't get me wrong. Like, tradition,
I grew up with it.
Gets its origin from Scripture. Like, that's where it all comes from, right? These are people after the first century who are looking back at the Gospels and analyzing them, and then giving their opinions on them. Which is why Augustine is a doctor of the church. Aquinas is a doctor of the church. Dante's not even a doctor of the church. He's just a poet. But
he's just a good writer.
Achieved his status based on the aesthetic that he was presenting, really more than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
But I've got to say, like, it's really hard.
Bandit roll on the floor laughing out loud. It's Dante's. Like, I felt pretty stupid, but I didn't know. But like
I asked that question at one time when I was a kid, for sure.
Yeah, like, is Dante's Inferno in the Bible?
Well, not Dante's Inferno, but I asked, like, a lot of the stories that we now attribute, or that is obviously attributable to the one I just talked about. I'm just drawing a blank.
Dante's Inferno?
No, the other one, the Protestant one.
Paradise Lost?
Paradise Lost, yeah. Milton. The stuff that we attribute to Milton is stuff that I thought was in the Bible when I was a kid. I assumed was in the Bible when I was a kid. Like, better to rule in heaven than to rule in hell than to serve in heaven. I thought that was a quote from the Bible, like, when I was a kid. Like, because some of these things, like, are presented in a way that's so. First of all, you think of the Bible as the source of all, like, sort of heavenly and infernal, like, materials, and you don't realize that there's a lot of mythology that sort of, like, grew up in the wake of that. There's a lot of question. It's the same thing, like, with Judaism, right? You have the Pentateuch, right? You have the Torah, but then you have all of these secondary, like the Talmud and the Babylonian Talmud and all these other Talmuds, or you have in you have these hadiths in Islam that are not the Quran. They're hadiths, and that hadith has a certain amount of authority depending on where it's from, right? So people in Iran are going to point you to different hadiths than people in Saudi Arabia, for instance. So there's all of these levels of authority that really come down to tradition, is what it comes down to. And so for Protestants, at least one strain of Protestants, the kind of Protestants that you think of when you think of mainline Protestants, tend to look at Milton in the same way that Catholics often look at Dante, in that way, as there are all these stories about the fall of the angels and the rise of hell and the things that happen, and we just assume we got that from the Bible somehow, and in some cases we did, and in many cases we didn't, and that's just kind of how the human understanding of these things sort of evolves over time.